in, we are learning that President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has called Prime Minister Modi and has strongly condemned the terror attack in Pahalgam. He conveyed in deepest condolences on the loss of innocent lives. He's expressed full support to India in the fight against terror. What we're learning is that during this conversation between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, the Russian president has emphasized that the perpetrators of the heinous Pahalgam attack and their supporters must be brought to justice. Both leaders have reiterated their commitment to further deepen the kind of partnership that the two countries share. Prime Minister Modi, we are given to understand, has also conveyed his greetings to President Putin. Remember, this is a time when they are celebrating 80th anniversary of Victory Day. But most importantly, the conversation between the two leaders, Prime Minister Modi and the Russian President Vladimir Putin, concentrated on what India's fight back is going to look like after the Pahalgam attack. Russia too now extending their support to India and its fight against terror, unequivocally claiming that the country and Vladimir Putin stands with the Indian Prime Minister and India in this fight against terror. Condolences were offered by the Russian president as well. Remember, this comes even at a time when we've seen several other countries, several other world leaders dialing Prime Minister Modi, expressing their condolences and offering support to India as far as India's right to defend itself in the face of such an attack is concerned, including the United States. Russia is now a latest country that has come out in support of India. Akash joining us, getting us more details on this. Akash, this list is only increasing. All of these global allies of India going on to affirm their support to what India's fight back could be.
Yes, and in fact, this is one strong message coming from Russia, where Russian president has extended his full support to India. And in fact, it has been categorically mentioned that Russia is standing with India in fight against terrorism. Both the leaders, in fact, had a telephonic conversation, Poonam, just a while back. And in fact, Russian president has, in fact, strongly condemned this attack in Pahalgam that happened on 22nd of April, where, 26 of the tourists were killed. In fact, they were asked for their religious identity before the terrorists, shot them. And in fact, after that, we have seen that how many countries have, in fact, approached, have given their, condemnation both on Twitter, or using a telephone, and in fact have had a word with leaders like S. Jaishankar and also Prime Minister Narendra Modi. At least 25 countries have extended their support. And this time around, Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, has in fact expressed his full support to India, and in fact has said that he is standing with India against the fight, against the fight in terrorism, towards terrorism.
Right, Akash, do stay on with us. Zaka Jacob also joining us for more perspective. Zaka, we've seen how some countries have come out and given their unequivocal support to India. Some others have cautioned against an escalation. How do you read Russia's response?
Look, I think the statement that has just been put out by the MEA and the words that have been used by the Russian president condemning the Pahalgam attack are very, very unequivocal, and they are extremely important in light of the fact that, just a few days ago we had the call between Sergei Lavrov and the Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar. He said that after that call, and also subsequently after he spoke to his Pakistani counterpart, that Russia would like to mediate if both Islamabad and Delhi ask for it, where there was a degree of sort of equivocation, if you will. I mean, they were trying to draw some kind of equity between India and Pakistan, saying that this is a long-standing dispute, it's a historical dispute, so on and so forth. I think today's statement by Vladimir Putin, as has been attributed by the MEA spokesperson, Mr. Jaiswal, clearly indicates that President Putin has taken a very, very unambiguous stand, condemning in no uncertain terms what happened in Pahalgam, and also implicit in the strong language that's been used by the Russian president is that India can and will be justifiably so, can take whatever action it deems in its national security interests. So I think it's very critical that the highest leadership in both countries have spoken on the phone. In fact, President Putin had also penned a letter to Prime Minister Modi, I think the very next day after the Pahalgam attack on the 23rd of April. He had written a letter both to Prime Minister Modi as well as to President Murmu, where again he had expressed very strong language, very strong sort of siding with India's position as far as the Pahalgam attack is concerned. And more importantly, the right to reply at a time and place of India's choosing. I think implicit in today's conversation, implicit in the language used in today's conversation, is the Russian president's almost no holds barred support to India to take whatever action it deems necessary to try and make Pakistan realize the costs of supporting these non-state actors, these terror proxies. So I think this call was extremely important. You also have to contrast this with, usually it's the Americans who make this move, right? Contrast this with what Trump has been saying. I think the last statement he made on board Air Force One, for example, where he basically said, look, they'll figure it out between themselves. And then he went on to say this is an issue that's been going on for 1,500 years, even though, Pakistan came into existence only 75 years ago. So the point is that I think you have to draw a comparison between the very, very unambiguous and very strongly worded statement that is now being attributed to Vladimir Putin in the conversation that he had with Prime Minister Modi, and the sort of almost wishy-washy, not wanting to intervene kind of a situation or comments that have been made by Donald Trump. In fact, Vice President Vance has gone to the extent of saying that, yes, we hope that India takes whatever action it deems fit, but at the same time, we don't want this to spill over into a regional conflict of any form or fashion. Putin's statement does not qualify, whether the action should be restricted or whether the action, can be long-lasting. And of course, people will also say that, look, Russia took measures of what it felt was necessary to protect its own interests when it attacked Ukraine. And today, that war is continuing for the better part of the last 3 years because Russia, fundamentally believes that an ever-expanding NATO into Ukraine was an existential threat to Russia, was a national security threat to Russia, and therefore he took action as he saw fit, as he deemed fit. And I think he is sort of giving that license, if you will, or at least fraternity of position as far as India and Russia are concerned. He's giving that same latitude to the Indian government and to the Indian leadership to take whatever action they deem fit to be able to deter Pakistan from using these terror proxies. So I think it's an important phone conversation. The language of that conversation is extremely important. And most importantly, like I said, it sort of lays to rest all this equivocation business that's been going on, especially after Lavrov's phone call. There was some degree of concern here in foreign policy circles in India that why is Russia trying to draw some kind of a balance or some kind of an equity between India and Pakistan, saying, we'll intervene if required and so on and so forth. I think Putin's call sort of puts the nail on that head.
And it does leave Pakistan in an embarrassing position, isn't it? Because their foreign minister, their envoy to Russia, all knocked on the doors of Russia, hoping that they would mediate, take a side. And when Russia did take a side, they decided to choose India's.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you clearly. I mean, I'm just going to say that, look, I think it's important to draw a distinction between, the kind, almost universal support that India has got from the United States. In fact, Trump was one of the first world leaders to speak, in fact, the first world leader to speak to Prime Minister Modi in the aftermath of Pahalgam. Russian president wrote a letter to both Prime Minister as well as to the president the very next day. You've had the President of France, the Prime Minister of Britain, the biggest and most important countries in the world, their leaders, the Israeli Prime Minister, the Italian Prime Minister, they've all had conversations with Prime Minister Modi in the last 2 weeks since the Pahalgam attack. And I think it's important to underline that. And you contrast that with the kind of support that Pakistan seems to be getting from Turkey, for example. Today, there's a Turkish naval warship that's been sent to the Karachi port. It is, of course, in transit for a military exercise in Malaysia. Malaysia has also come out in support of Pakistan. Iran, the foreign minister of Iran is going to be here in India later this week. He'll be meeting with both Dr. Jaishankar and Prime Minister Modi. He, of course, when he landed in Islamabad, again said the whole thing about we can mediate if both sides ask us to, and so on. So I think there's a very clear distinction between the kind of support, the words of support, and the nature of the countries that are supporting India in this case, and the ones that are supporting Pakistan. The ones that are finding common cause with Pakistan are members of the OIC, which is the Organization of Islamic Countries, countries like Turkey, who have sort of consistently taken Pakistan's position and Pakistan's side when it comes to the Kashmir issue, for example. Even Malaysia has sort of taken Pakistan's side, at least not as overtly as Turkey has in the past, but certainly seems to be resonant on the Pakistani side. So they have made this into a sort of common cause, if you will, of Islamic countries around the world coming together in support of Pakistan, taking a line that is more aligned to what Pakistan has been saying.
The last hour. Anything can happen between the bells. But what happens during the last hour is what matters the most. The biggest market swings. A close-up look at what's driving them and how the investors are reacting. Watch the most seasoned market mavens guide you through the most important hour of the trading day.
NSE Closing Bell.
At these times, only on CNBC TV 18 and CNBCTV18.com.
For more news and updates, all you need to do is follow CNBC TV 18 on all of our digital platforms.